In an earlier video, we created a new capacity plan, we added our teams, we defined their capacity, and then we added the features that we want to plan. And immediately we started seeing some warnings pop up in our plan. And that's all completely normal and part of the process. But let's go ahead and look at that same plan. And to do that, I'm going to go to Portfolio Capacity Planning and select the plan for fiscal year 2024 Q4. In that earlier video, we were able to address all of the warnings that the capacity planning page generated, but we do still have a problem. The mobile team is currently planned to 100% of capacity, and we discussed that it's always best to schedule work below 100% of capacity to account for scope growth. Now, the mobile team has this smaller feature that we could steer out, but if we look at our list of portfolio items, you can see that this is our second highest priority item. So we really do need to get this one done. Upon investigation, it turns out that there are stories in this feature that the security team could easily take on. So it makes sense to split or share this feature across those two teams. To do that, we're not going to change the assignment. This feature will stay assigned to the mobile team, which we do from the Features tab. But we can select this gear icon, and we can do this from the Features tab or the Projects by Total tab. And then from the Gear menu, we can select Allocate. And that brings up the Allocate to Projects dialog. As the assigned team, the mobile team is the only team listed and the estimate field is empty. And that means that the mobile team is responsible for the full 25 points. If we add the security team and enter 10 points, we are allocating 10 of the 25 points to the security team. But if we leave the mobile team estimate empty, the mobile team will still be responsible for the full 25 points that were originally estimated, and the security team's 10 points will be in addition to that. So let's change the mobile team to 15 points. And now the mobile team is showing 15 points toward their capacity, which brings them down to 94%. That's still a little high, but we're going to call that good for this video. The security team is now showing 10 points for that same feature. And notice that the allocation column in the mobile team now indicates that there are allocations to the security team. And in the security team, there's an indicator that there are allocations from the mobile team. Also notice that the icon changed in the estimated column. It's worth noting that the types of estimates are ranked from least to most accurate. So a preliminary estimate is the least accurate, the refined estimate is more accurate, and the allocated estimate is considered the most accurate estimate of all. And the capacity plan uses the most accurate estimate that's available for the feature for all of its calculations. So for this feature, we use the preliminary estimate because that's all that's available. And here we use the refined estimate. And for the feature where we just added allocations, the plan uses the allocation estimate. Now, if we look at the security team, we've given them the same problem we just saw for the mobile team. They're now planned to 100%. They also have a fairly small feature assigned, and if we look at this feature in our list of features, you can see that this is the lowest priority item in our backlog. So it probably makes sense to just steer that out. Also, before we do that, it is worth noting that you can see the to and from allocations in the Features tab as well. So to steer this feature out, we can remove it completely from our plan, or we can just move it to another plan, such as the Q1 plan for next year. But we recommend initially just removing all assignments. This leaves it in the plan, but unassigned, which lets us clearly see the items that we wanted to get in the plan that we had to steer out because they didn't fit in the team's capacity. And when the plan is completely final, we can remove the unassigned items or move them to the plan for our next release. Unfortunately, we don't have a plan yet for Q1 next year, so we'll have to create that before we can move it. So that's how you assign portfolio items to a team and how you use the Allocate feature to split or share work between multiple teams. But let's consider another example. Some organizations create specialized teams, such as a database team, a security team, maybe a documentation team, or an education team. If a feature requires specific tasks from one of those teams, you can allocate story points or counts to that team for their tasks or stories. So let's assume we have a documentation team that needs to create documentation for one or more of these features. The first thing we need to do is to add this team to our plan. Then we need to define the capacity for this team. This is a smaller team, so their capacity will reflect that at 95 points. And this team does have some features of their own, so we'll add those features. And we'll assign them to the documentation team. Now, the core team has this large identity monitoring feature that is going to require some new documentation. So we can select our gear icon and select Allocate. We'll add the documentation team, and that team estimates that this documentation work is around 5 points. But this time, we're going to leave the core team estimate blank. That means the 5 points we just added for the doc team will be in addition to the 90 points that the core team has already estimated. And that's because this work is actually in addition to the development work that's already planned. We're not splitting that work between two teams. So the core team still has 90 points for this feature, but the doc team also has their 5 points, which brings their capacity to 84%. And notice that the core team is still using the refined estimate because we left their allocation field blank, and that's perfectly fine. But we could enter a value for them in the allocation dialog, and that will change the estimate type that's being used for their capacity calculations. And now you understand how to assign and allocate work to the teams in your capacity plan. To learn more about Rally and Agile practices, check out our blog and community. Like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you'll never miss new content as it's added.